trying to fully utilize time and space in the vegetable garden in the Bay Area, California sometimes can be a bit challenging. Right here in the front of the screen, we've got tomato plants, which were put in back in April. And they're starting to ripen up a few tomatoes. Here in the foreground, just ahead of them, is old broccoli from last year. It's still coming along. It's still it's a little senile, but it's still producing some shoots. So I've left it there. Broccoli was pulled out of the row in order to install the onions that are right there behind it last November. We took seedlings of red burger onion that I'd grown here on the site. We transplanted them in there right to the broccoli last fall. And the onions developed throughout the winter months here. Onions grow really well from October through to about June in coastal California. So I went through and I hollowed out a little bit of the onions in the bed then in order to install the tomato plants in April. Now the tomatoes are starting to grow all over the place, and the onions have fallen down here to the ground. Their tops have all collapsed and they're beginning to dry. So that's pretty much how we determine when it's time to dig the onions. The onions here, the tops have lost pretty much all their turgidity. They've gone limp and they're dropping. See over here that a lot of the greens have turned brown. And so there's no more energy in greening on these onions. They're totally in the bulbing mode, and they're just about to the end of it. If I was to leave them in here for too long, what could happen is we could begin to get some rot on the skins and such, because I am watering the tomatoes, which are right next to them. If this was a really big bed of onions out to its own, I'd probably use a spading fork to go through the bed. But here in this case, since I'm going to work between my tomato plants, you see I've taken a trowel, popped it in underneath each one of the onions here to give them a little lift so the onions come right out of the earth without tearing the greens off the top. I like to use the greens for hanging them up to dry over there. And there you go, just like that. I don't like to break the necks off. And so giving them just a little bit of leverage like that so they come out of the ground is a good idea. I've got a pretty decent pile of red onions sitting here in front of me. Now I want to take them and bring them out of the garden to my onion drying spot, which is a nice, cool, shady environment underneath my English walnut tree. Well, here we are underneath the old English walnut, venerable old beast. Underneath here is where I do most of my summertime drying of seeds and vegetables. Now, like they say in the song, it never rains in sunny California, or something on that order. And so in the summertime we really don't receive any rain here. So it's underneath a nice, cool, shady environment like this, we can expect to cure onions and garlic just fine. Over here at the end I've got some spring peas drying in the pod, still on the vines over there, for next year's seed. Some of the onions that I had to remove early are already dry in the top. So this one here is about ready to get the tops cut off, dry skins cleaned off of it, and stuck in mesh bags for storage. Don't dry your onions in the sun. It doesn't do them any good. A shady environment like this with good air circulation is really one of the best places. The fact is that I will often just leave them here on the hoof, using them up as we go until we start to get into October or November and the rains begin again. Then I have to clean them all up and put them where they'll stay dry, because the rainwater will start them sprouting a bit. But as long as it's perfectly dry and in the shade, they seem to keep just fine over here underneath the walnut tree. You'll notice that I'm using some plastic tubs here to hold the onions. They have ventilation. These were bulb boxes that were used for shipping daffodils and tulips. They're strong, They'll hold quite a bit of weight, and they've got some handles on the side. Milk crates like that one over there will work just fine, and in fact even plain old mud flats from the nursery, when you buy a full flat of flowers like this one here, work just fine for curing onions. Any kind of recycled plastic container that has a webbing is a real good place to dry your bulbs. So over here where we lifted all the onions out from in between the tomato plants, I've got a great big gap. Now eventually we will end up with tomato vines laying through that area, but in the meantime I should have at least 30 days before that becomes a complete jungle, and so I could still grow something in there. So my question is, what do I plant between my tomato plants? The answer to the question is simple: lettuce. Here I have a whole bunch of lettuce starts inside the greenhouse, just about the right size to get out there and set between those tomatoes. And so in the order of things, last summer I had a row of broccoli. In fall we thinned the row of broccoli. We added onions in blocks between the broccoli plants. When spring came, we thinned some of the onions early. We put tomato plants into the onions, leaving the healthiest broccoli that are still alive out there. Now the tomatoes are spreading out, broccoli's still bearing. We have finished the onions, and it's almost July. Onions are out to cure, and I have enough room between those tomatoes. I should be able to raise a crop of Boston lettuce, or maybe some Tom Thumb or a Nui lettuce before the tomatoes get too rambunctious and fill the space. So there's how to make the best advantage of a rather small area by dealing with time and space here in the Bay Area garden.